Hey guys, I hope you're all well and you're all keeping safe. I have the privilege of bringing to you today's daily devotional video. I'm going to be speaking from a well-known story from the book of Matthew of when Jesus was walking on the water. I'll be reading from chapter 14 verse 22 and it says, "Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, 'It is a ghost.' And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, 'Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid.' And Peter answered, 'Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water.' He said, 'Come.' So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, 'Lord, save me.' Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, 'O you of little faith, why did you doubt?' And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, 'Truly, you are the Son of God.'" When I've read that verse previous times, I've always seemed to focus on the bit of Jesus standing on the water, Peter walking out towards him, and Peter starts to sink as he takes his eyes off of Jesus. But as I've read it this time, I was really drawn to Jesus' presence in the whole thing, and I couldn't quite get my head around how the disciples didn't recognize Jesus. They thought it was a ghost that was walking towards them, and even though these guys knew Jesus, they followed him, they spoke to Jesus every day, they still could not recognize him, to the point where Jesus has said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." Jesus said this to them, and Peter's response to this is, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." If Peter still needs that persuading, he still isn't sure that it is actually Jesus. And as we read, it's actually fear. Fear has blinded the disciples. It has blinded Peter from seeing and recognizing Jesus. And I was reminded of tough times in my life where I've lost Jesus. I've lost the sight of Jesus just as the disciples have. And, you know, I knew Jesus, but actually I seem to have replaced my faith with fear. My own personal storms that I faced, I tended to try and fight them in my own strength instead of recognizing Jesus and leaning on him. And, you know, we just got to look out of our windows and look on the news and just see that our nation is currently battling against a huge storm in the shape of the coronavirus. And, you know, it just seems to be a lot of fear and a lot of worry kind of wherever you look. But the good news, the great news, is that Jesus is in it with us, just as he was with the disciples. I suppose the question is, are we going to recognize him in the midst of all this fear and all this worry? You know, it can be a challenge actually sometimes that when we read verses that tell us to be faithful, how are we doing that in our actions, in our words, in our thinking? And, you know, these moments, especially in the time that we're in now, we as Christians can have such a huge impact on those that don't know Christ. You know, we can encourage, we can change the situation, you know, and we, with our actions, can change the world. We just need to focus on Jesus. You know, we don't just want to celebrate in the victory. We want to recognize Jesus during the battle, you know, and there will be moments where we slip up and we feel like we're starting to sink, just as Peter did. But you know what? Jesus is still there. Just as he put his hand out to balance and to bring Peter closer to him, Jesus is there wanting to do that with us, especially in times like this. We just got to look to him. And, so let's remember, if we are struggling, to ask for prayer. If you want to bless someone else, send a friend some scripture, encourage your family, build yourself in worship, and know and actually live in the promises of God. I really hope this has been helpful and encouraging to you guys, and I hope you guys stay blessed and stay safe.